Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Checkdown Pod. On this week's show, we'll kick things off by checking in on some of our favorite Week 2 matchups. Next, we'll throw the red flag, each giving our hottest take from this past week's games. Then we'll drop our updated power rankings before we conclude with a preview of this Thursday's contest between the Giants and the 49ers. I'm Richard, and here with my co-host Harry. How you doing, Harry?
Listen, I'm doing great. I enjoyed watching those games this week, especially the Giants, finally giving me some joy. Um, but yeah, had a great week of football. How are
I
you?
know, quite the comeback win for the Giants over the Cardinals. Check out on the YouTube channel. Harry posted a great breakdown of Jalen Hyatt taking the top off the defense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. That was definitely the turning point in the game and kind of the play that everybody wanted to see. So yeah, definitely a nice little breakdown if you have 3 minutes of time.
yeah, we'll give that a shout out. And yeah, I'm doing good. You want to kick things off, get things started with the Thursday night game?
Yeah, so Thursday night was Eagles Vikings. And listen, I do have a little bit of concern about the Eagles, and it's not about the Eagles overall whatever. I think they'll figure it out. But I think the Eagles right now are gonna be not a bad team, but like when you think about what the Eagles are, you think about the Eagles as like a top three team in the NFL or top whatever. They're just not playing like that. And when you take into account all the turnover that's happened in the coaching staff and stuff like that, it's clear that whether it's losing Shane Steichen or Jonathan Gannon even or whatever it is in the turnover in the coaching staff and how they're playing different and how there is adjustment, it's gonna hurt them in the short term, and I'm interested to see how that goes for them.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the final score of the game was one possession game, was 34-28, which is Vikings are a solid team, but if you're the Eagles at home, you definitely want to have a more commanding lead on this game. And it felt like they just kept on letting the Vikings get back in it, whereas they could have just put it away, but they were unable to capitalize on those opportunities.
Yeah, and one way that like I've definitely seen that happen is with Jalen Hurts's arm. I remember the play to Devontae Smith where he did come down with it, and congrats to them on that big play, but he just underthrew him by so much it could have been a touchdown, and he just forced Smitty to moss him for literally no reason. I don't remember who was on him at that point, but the weak arm from Jalen Hurts actually limits the Eagles' offense so much, and it hasn't been so much of an issue, but I'm starting to see it become a little bit more of an issue this year, more so than it was last year.
Yeah, do you think I think there were reports that maybe he told what's it, Donovan McNabb that he's been playing hurt? Who do you
I
tell
actually did
that?
not see that. I didn't
Yeah,
see that, but that
yes.
might explain, you know, the weak arm Jalen Hurts debacle right now.
Yeah, no, because it's interesting because they're a good team that just isn't playing good football, and they're talented enough that they're coming away with the wins. But based on this game, they dominated time of possession. I think let me get the numbers right here. By about 19 minutes, they had the edge, and yet they just could not put the game away, and they kept on letting Kirk Cousins get back into it. Um, so yeah, I think we can touch on this a little later when we do our power rankings, but are you concerned about the Eagles offense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the defense, even though there definitely was some issues with the defense, I think it's a new scheme over there. The corners were out, so I'll give the defense a break, um, but the offense is really what's concerning me. And even though they put up what was it, 35 points,
Yeah,
the Vikings
34
fumbled the
points.
ball four times. The fact that this game was not won by 24 points is ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jalen Hurts struggled to throw the ball down the field. Another issue that I think we saw play out on the sidelines was struggling to get AJ Brown involved. He seemed unhappy about that. Um, the run game was seemingly the best thing that was working. What did you think of DeAndre Swift's performance?
Yeah, Swift looked really good, and I think he's able to capitalize a lot from this Eagles offensive line, who's just going to give him a path, and he doesn't need to be, the best vision guy in the world because he's always had issues with that, but he can just go behind that Eagles line. He can be athletic. He can, get versatile a safety in space, and he can make plays, and that's what he does. He's a playmaker in space, and behind this Eagles offensive line, he can maximize that.
Yeah, it was definitely surprising week one after seeing Kenneth Gainwell get a lot of the touches, but with Gainwell out, Swift had an opportunity to really cement himself as the lead back here in Philly, and he did just that. I think he played really nicely, a lot of downhill running. Yeah, using that low center of gravity as a little shorter, stockier guy. Um, I think this is like DeAndre Swift that the Lions were hoping they'd get, and he just didn't really show it a lot of the time there in Detroit. Um, but yeah, definitely a breakout game for him.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see who gets more of the touches between Gainwell and Swift going forward, with Swift playing that well.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and now moving on to the Vikings. What do you think of Kirk Cousins and that offense?
So Kirk Cousins just he does the Kirk Cousins thing where he's okay, you know what I mean? I have nothing else to say about Kirk Cousins except that was pretty okay. The main thing that I have about the Vikings offense is I love what Jordan Addison does to this offense and how well he complements Justin Jefferson. And he's like different than Stephon Diggs, but there's like a nice feeling of like that Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen kind of thing that the Vikings had. Um, with Justin Jefferson being such a nasty route runner and always being open, obviously way more athletic than Thielen, but you know, just I love what the Vikings have at receiver now, and they turned what was a low-key weakness of them with them just having Justin Jefferson and who else. Now when they acquire TJ Hawkinson, they have three legit receiving threats, and you can see that stretches out defenses a lot. And it's very helpful for Kirk to have those kinds of guys.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him turn to TJ Hawkinson, and it's kind of like his safety blanket in the red zone. And obviously, uh, Justin Jefferson's just going to do what he does, just get tons of targets and make ridiculous catches. And after the catch, he showed, I think, a lot, some really nice rack ability in these in this game. But yeah, I don't know. It was a solid performance by the Kirk Cousins led Vikings, which is what you come to expect from a Kirk Cousins offense.
Yeah. Finally, though, on a primetime game, he's able to make things happen.
Yeah,
So you do love to see that.
yeah. There's kind of putting the haters to bed there a little bit. But,
Yeah, finally.
um, what do you think of Alexander Madison?
Well, luckily for me, I don't really need to think about Alexander Madison anymore because Cam Akers is now the newest member of the Minnesota Vikings,
Yeah,
which to kind of dodge the question a little bit, and short answer is I did not like Alexander Madison, and he just doesn't look like he's a lead back. Um, I don't know what the deal is with Cam Akers and why he was never able to get it working in LA, but I seriously think that Cam Akers should be one of those like Tony Pollard types where they're just like really good like yards per carry guys, maybe not always bell cows, but I don't understand why that didn't happen in LA. It seems like they were always trying to replace him, but now I think with Minnesota, there's a clear opening with how mid Alexander Madison is. And I think that's his time to step in.
yeah. Cam Akers should get a chance to be the feature back there in Minnesota, and he has a lot of potential to maybe make the defense think less about just throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was an element that the Vikings were missing so far.
Yeah. Anything else from this Thursday night game before we move on?
Um, Forgot to mention this on the Eagles end. Jalen Carter, just an absolute beast. I don't know why I forgot to mention that. The guy just comes in immediately. I think I said this last week. I might not have. It's very possible that Jalen Carter, like people can be looking back on the great defensive tackles like 15 years from now, and they're like, how the hell did Jalen Carter fall to 9? And how the hell did Aaron Donald fall to 14? Because he is like in that. I mean, he's not there yet, but he's so close to that Aaron Donald tier like already, and he's played 2 games. He's so unreal. I'm the biggest Jalen Carter fan there is as a football player.
Yeah, as I mean, we it's very rare, I feel like, in this day and age of football to see a D tackle that can like get after the passer really. And I think that Jalen Carter's already cemented himself in that. Definitely a little pump the brakes on the Aaron Donald but tier, but I don't know. Can he rise up to the echelons of like a big Dexter Lawrence and Giants or Quinnen Williams for the Jets? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and also one thing about him that makes him so good is that a lot of these can rush the passer defensive tackles can't defend the run. A guy like Javon Hargrave is a really good pass rusher from the interior, but he just was not a good run defender last year. Jalen Carter is a legit run defender. And the difference between that is night and day for the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean was already like a source of riches for them on that defensive line. Just got even better, and they have Hassan Reddick, who I really really like. Guy who's criminally underrated for a long time. They still got Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. I mean, we mentioned this last week, but it's just an embarrassment of riches on that front four.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to love what the Eagles do when it comes to building in the trenches.
Yeah. Anything else on this game, or should we move on to our Sunday afternoon game?
Let's talk about the Broncos and the Commanders.
So yeah, I mean, game came down to some crazy Hail Mary from Russ, tip drill. The Broncos lost this 35-33 on a failed extra point attempt. Maybe pass interference, maybe not. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? The end of the game.
Listen, only in the Broncos and Commanders game can like crap like that happen. It's like it's just such a like it's just two low lifes going at it. And like this whole game was just so funny to watch. And that ending was just the pièce de résistance at the end. Um the tip drill touchdown and then at the end just to miss the 2 point conversion is so funny. And was there PI? Yeah. Like it doesn't matter. Like it wasn't that like it wasn't noticeable in game time. When you saw it on replay, you're like, all right, there might have been something a little bit there. But another thing that I think people aren't talking about on that play specifically is Russ had Jerry Jeudy on the crossing route. And
You're talking about on the 2 point conversion here?
on the 2 point conversion, he had Jerry Jeudy in the back of the end zone on the crosser. And I forgot who he passed to in the end. They were running mesh, and the defender on Jeudy got lost, and he didn't go to Jeudy with that, and I don't know why. And I think it would have been completed if he did.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was a game that you could see that Russ has definitely improved upon his disastrous year last year, but still
Yeah.
maybe not all the way back to what he was in Seattle.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing I will say though that has stuck with him, at least right now, is the deep ball just looks so nice.
Yeah.
And a guy like Marvin Mims, I feel like, is really unlocking that deep ball. Um, and he's been a great compliment to him. And not just that, but the punt return, that kind of speed and that kind of playmaker is huge. And we haven't been getting it for the Broncos with Jeudy or with Sutton.
Yeah, when you add Marvin Mims to that receiver trio there, it shapes up to be one of the better groups in the league, and you have guys who are pretty good at their own things and they complement each other nicely.
Yeah. We'll see how Marvin Mims impacts going forward because so far he looked real good.
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about from this Broncos offense is I just can't wait to see the real Javonte Williams back. And I know it's a little unfair right now coming back from the what is that ACL injury.
Yep.
So we've seen guys like Saquon struggle in the years after that. But I think once Javonte Williams is back to full strength, you maybe see this team, this offense unlock kind of the play action a little bit more, or maybe just have some sort of running threat because right now he just hasn't been that same guy.
Yeah. And Javante as a prospect was real good. And I don't know if there's just like if it's the decrease in athleticism that comes with ACL injuries or what it is, but you really need to see a guy like Javante turn it up if the Broncos are going to be a legit competitor in the AFC West.
Yeah, playing in one of the toughest divisions in football, it's tough to establish a rhythm on offense if you don't have a formidable run game.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
One more thing on the Broncos offense and talking about Russ is that he took 7 sacks. And I know that the Commanders' pass rush is legit, and it is, but he was standing in the pocket for so long. There were so many plays where you just got to get rid of the ball, and he didn't. And sacks are a quarterback stat. And I will die on that hill because, I mean, not for everyone, but for a lot of quarterbacks where it's just like you've had 3 seconds to throw, the ball should have been out already, you know? And if you're taking a sack there, that's on you.
yeah, I think that, I mean, listen, it's not a great offensive line. They're going up against a quality defensive line with Chase Young coming back and Montez Sweat. And they obviously got Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne up the middle. But still, you gotta you gotta know that coming in if you're Russ and know that you gotta get the ball out quickly. And he just didn't seem to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that absolutely plagued them all game long. And it's gonna continue to plague them if he can't get that under control.
Yeah. Um, anything else from the Broncos offense before maybe we talk about the Commanders offense?
So let's talk about those commies.
Yeah. What did you think of Sam Howell?
All right. As the biggest Sam Howell enthusiast, known QB1 out of my draft class, which like doesn't even make him a first rounder out of that class, but still. I thought he looked pretty good. I mean, he's pretty accurate. He's a super underrated athlete and not like the Daniel Jones type of underrated athlete where it's like, okay, he's white, so he's an underrated athlete. But I mean like the type of athlete that like quarterback athlete. He can run in both directions. Like Jones is a good runner when he's running straight, but Jones running to the left and to the right is pretty non-existent. Um, but Sam Howell can run and he can make a guy miss in space. And he also has a pretty underrated arm, I don't know if that gets talked about enough when people talk about Sam Howell. I also thought he did a decent job of moving through progressions, but he did it kind of slowly, and he too would also take a lot of sacks. Um, One thing he does have similar to Daniel Jones is they both kind of have that pocket presence where it's like you feel like they're good in the pocket because they don't look anxious, but they're so comfortable in the pocket that they end up taking a lot of sacks and they end up fumbling a lot, which Daniel Jones has taken out of his game a little bit, but there still are some semblances of that. And you're really seeing it a lot with Sam Howell.
Yeah, I think that he's a player who, with more time under center, which I'm surprised he didn't get last year, um, he should be able to kind of get rid of some of those problems. And who knows, maybe he could be the franchise guy for the commies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you look at where the Commanders are going to be drafting, they're going to be a team like the Panthers, where the Panthers were always like the seventh, the eighth, the ninth pick, never good enough to get a quarterback. So the Commanders are either going to need to sell the house to get that top pick, or they're just going to be stuck in that area where there just isn't a quarterback worth taking by the time their pick comes up, and you might as well just ride it out with Sam Howell.
Yeah. Now, speaking about that offense, you want to talk about the weapons, specifically maybe Brian Robinson, who had a very nice game.
Yeah, so one thing that's really good about the Commanders is the situation is actually really good for a quarterback to walk into. So Sam Howell has a lot going for him when he's got Terry McLaurin, where there was the play where he just kind of said, F it, Terry's down there somewhere, and Terry mossed like 3 guys for the ball. And that's what you can do when you have Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson's just such a smooth separator. Curtis Samuel's a great weapon. And the guy who you were talking about, Brian Robinson, was running super hard and he was just getting extra yards. And having guys like that on your team just make it so much easier to be a quarterback.
Yeah, I think that Brian Robinson had a nice game. I believe he forced 6 or 7 missed tackles. I have to double check on that. But he just nice running and taking the pressure off your quarterback here in a tough, I mean, I don't know, it's tough. It seemingly it should have been a tough road matchup for the Commanders.
Yeah, definitely a great, like, he's a very stable running back to have. He's not going to break out that many big plays, although he did a lot this week. He's just going to get those yards that you need. He's going to, run through the tackles and just do what's needed. You got to love Brian Robinson, and he's just a guy who makes your job easier as a quarterback.
Yeah. And especially like you said, when you have those receivers in Jahan Dotson and Scary Terry is just such an underrated player. You just never seem they you got to just force feed him the ball sometimes, and they just haven't been able to do that. But when he gets the chance, he's going to make the catch and catch those 50-50 balls.
Yeah, absolutely. Those 50-50 balls are not 50-50 for Terry. It's like 70-30.
Anything else on either side on the defensive side before we move on to the Sunday night game?
The only thing I had is that for the Commanders defense, I have no clue what to think about them because the pass rush is so good and the secondary is so mid that it's a real, like, I just don't know what they are yet, and I'm interested to monitor how that's going to progress as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think like we mentioned before, when they have the front four that they do, and the high pedigree guys on that defensive line, and they've invested in the middle linebacker position with Jamin Davis, who had a nice game. Um, but what do you? It's tough in the secondary what to make of it with that group of guys.
Yeah, and I mean they invested in Emmanuel Forbes, who did get an interception, so good on him, but he was not exactly he's not the number one corner that a guy like Joey Porter or Deontay Banks would have been, I think, for them to take in that spot.
Yeah,
But I'd love for Forbes and the rest of this Commanders defense to prove me wrong.
yeah, we'll see. Only time will tell.
Yeah.
So now moving on to the Sunday night game, it's Patriots. What do you think?
Um, so watching this game, it was really interesting because last week you saw just the offensive explosion from the Dolphins, and this week you got a much more balanced game from them where you didn't have Tyreek Hill going for 200 yards and you had the running backs go off. Raheem Mostert had a really nice game. The defense looked pretty good. And the thing about Tua is that his pocket movement and patience is real good, but he has a ceiling that guys like Burrow and Allen and Mahomes can go way over. And when it comes to making plays, he just can't do it the way that they can. And he's obviously been a lot more consistent than the three of those have been this season. But it's hard to say how he'll do in a playoff setting compared to those three when you know that those guys can go crazy out of structure.
Yeah, I think that he the arm talent alone, maybe not living up to or not living up, not comparable to some of the other QBs in the AFC. But listen, he's got the weapons around him. He's got now a couple of backs and Raheem Mostert and Devon. I never know how to pronounce his last name.
Devon A-Chain,
A-Chain.
I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And Jeff Wilson may be coming back soon. So, and the defense looked good, as you said. So Dolphins maybe can make some noise in this AFC East.
Yeah, and if you're just doing what I said before, like moving well in the pocket, being patient, and just delivering the ball on time, the rest will come when he's got those weapons, when he's got the run game working the way he does, and when he's got Mike McDaniel, everything else is going to come. And I just love the way that the Dolphins are looking right now.
Yeah, I think a fun team for sure.
Yeah.
What did you make of the Patriots offense?
So I actually thought Mac Jones looked pretty good in this game. And I think Mac Jones has looked pretty good this season. I mean, pretty decent. Like he's looked much better than he did last year, looking much closer to his first year. But I don't know what the deal is with Ramondre, because I think the Patriots can be a really difficult team to beat, and I think they can stun a lot of teams. But Ramondre is kind of the X factor in taking them from like a kind of difficult but very beatable opponent to a upset watch weekly, and really nobody wants to play them type of team. So, and if it's not going to be Ramondre, maybe Zeke, but it doesn't really appear like Zeke is, able to be that guy anymore either. So the Patriots run game is going to need to step up if they become, a team that is really ready to upset everyone.
Yeah, I think you thought that Ramondre would take that next step up without Damian Harris still there and getting an opportunity to be the feature back. And so far, he's looked all right, maybe a little less than all right, but you love to see some more out of him.
Yeah, definitely. Should we talk about the Patriots defense?
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot. I feel like a lot to talk about there.
Yeah. Christian Gonzalez is so good, to the point where everybody knew when he fell to 17 that it was ridiculous. And it just shows. The guy is so good. You give Bill Belichick that kind of athlete, and Christian Gonzalez is pretty disciplined too. He's already looking elite. He's going to be just unimaginable in a couple of years. And he's one of the few guys who can go stride for stride with Tyreek Hill. And obviously the ball was underthrown, but still to be able to keep up with Tyreek Hill that whole way, he's just such an elite athlete, and his instincts are real good too.
Yeah, I think a guy it's kind of like you said, unfair letting him get to Bill Belichick there at 17. And yeah, I mean, adding him to what was already a really good defensive unit.
Well, I'll brush up on one more thing on this game before moving
Okay.
on. Giants legend Joe Judge might be the greatest special teams coordinator of all time. And I don't know if that, field goal block was a Joe Judge thing or a Bill Belichick thing, but whoever came up with that is a genius. And I think every team is going to start doing that now.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you saw that Jason Sanders started he missed the next field goal because he was just so afraid of that. And I think we could see field goals go down this season, field goal percentages go down this year, unless teams find a way to counter it, which they always do. But it'll be interesting to see how that's done.
Yeah, I mean, that was just brilliant. And you have to think that Bill Belichick is involved in that somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. That was just genius. You love that.
One last thing for me before we finish this game, Mike McDaniel making a strong case to be one of the best offensive minds in the league.
Yeah, I mean, Mike McDaniel is just an unreal coach. And I think the only person right now who I would consider better than him is his mentor in Kyle Shanahan. Those to me right now are the two best coaches. There's some other guys, Dayball, still in that conversation.
Gotta give love to the Giants legend.
Gotta give love to the Giants legend. McVay has looked real good this year, but yeah, I think those are probably the two best coaches in football, Shanahan and McDaniels. And yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely a fun game, clash of AFC rivals. Um, and yeah, you should we move on to the two Monday night games?
yeah. So let's start with the Panthers, who I did not watch the whole game because I was watching the Browns and Steelers, and I wish the NFL would not do this where they whatever. But I did see a little bit of Bryce Young in the hour and 20 minutes before the Browns Steelers game started. And listen, does Bryce Young look good? No, he doesn't look good right now. But the Panthers just have to get some playmakers for him because every single play, you have Bryce Young in the pocket. He's going through his reads. No one's open. Then he tries to make a play. No play is made. And then he kind of does something either stupid. He takes a sack. He throws a ball into harm's way, whatever it is. This is a real example of the surrounding cast just being so poor that I don't know how many plays there have been where I've been like, oh, that's a play where everything went right for Bryce and he could make a play happen. It's always been like the rookie quarterback in his first game or second game has to go make plays.
Yeah, that's he definitely not the situation that you wanted maybe to Bryce to land in if you're a fan of his coming out of the draft, which I think many of us were. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean that listen, that's what's gonna happen when you trade your best weapon in DJ Moore to go and get him. You can't really have Adam Thielen, who's what now, 33 years old. Um,
I would venture to say older, even maybe like 35.
no, he's 33, just double checking here.
Got it.
Um, but yeah, as your number one target, that's not a recipe for success. And I don't think you got what they wanted or expected out of Miles Sanders in the running game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are hating on Bryce Young. They're like, oh, he's looked like the worst rookie quarterback. First of all, it's been 2 games, so
Yeah.
relax. And second of all, even the Texans have given Stroud way more weapons. That offensive line isn't too bad with those two tackles. You have Nico Collins, you have Robert Woods, um,
Hank Dell
there's
off a big week.
Tank Dell's looking good. It's not a bad team there. At least it's not a bad offense for a rookie quarterback to go into. The Panthers are just a terrible situation.
Yeah, and I think you'd like to see the offensive line play a little better, having invested in Taylor Moton's getting a lot of money, I think, and obviously Ike Ekwonu, the first round pick. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So not a great situation for Bryce Young. Anything to say on the Saints side of the ball?
Um, I love the way the Saints just chuck that ball deep. They they just Derek Carr always had a very underrated deep ball, and he continues to show it. And good on him and good on the Saints. They've looked pretty good. I think they play the Packers this week, so that'll be a little bit of a bigger test than what they've had to start the season. And let's see if they can stay hot.
Yeah. I don't think there's much else to add from this game. Pretty much a boring game that the box score maybe makes look a little closer than it actually was. Um,
Yeah.
so should we move on to the final game, the Browns and Steelers?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
What do you
Um,
think of what do you think from that Steelers offense?
Listen, the Steelers offense is just so deplorable considering how good their defense is. And that starts with the man upstairs calling plays, Matt Canada.
Matt Canada getting no love from the fans.
Yeah, they were not happy. And why should they? He's awful. He is terrible. But with that being said, Kenny Pickett's not too great either. And I see Kenny Pickett not getting enough blame, or I guess the way the media would attack, you know, anyone else for playing like this, they just are not attacking Kenny Pickett for it. And I don't know why. Not that, I don't think the media should attack anyone, but I don't know why Kenny Pickett's getting like this treatment of him being like an unreal quarterback when he looks pretty mid.
Yeah, I think
Um,
they're giving him a little bit of a honeymoon period of the local kid coming in from Pitt and getting placed in a situation which, listen, you have Najee, who you expect to be good, hasn't looked so great. You have good weapons, and they got Deontay Johnson, who's now hurt, but George Pickens, uh, they had Allen Robinson to that receiver room. They have Pat Fryermuth, decent weapons on offense, and obviously giving one of the best defenses in the league. Uh, yeah, it is a little surprising to see how he kind of seems to get absolved from this situation in Pittsburgh.
yeah, definitely. Um, I think that's all I have to say on the Steelers offense. Um,
Yeah, anything. I mean, I think you'll have something to say for their defense based on how they played.
yeah, this defense is so good, and the defense is so good that the offense can do literally nothing and they can still win a game. And I think the Browns are actually kind of similar to the Steelers, where it's like that offense is so mid, but the defense is really good. So this was just like a matchup of who does it better. But yeah, the Steelers are just a team that can upset anyone and they'll give every team a tough game, but they're the same old Steelers, like 20th best team in the league that, you know, maybe if they got rid of Matt Canada, then they would be the 14th best team in the league.
Yeah, they're a Mike Tomlin coach football team. They play hard, play good defense, and I think the difference in this game, moving on to the Browns now, is that Deshaun Watson really did not look so good.
Yeah, last week I gave Deshaun Watson the benefit of the doubt. I was like, oh, it was raining. The interceptions were not on him. I mean, tipped interceptions. If a receiver drops the ball and it's an interception, we need to start having that become a receiver stat or whatever. Like Saquon Barkley already has two drops that have turned into interceptions, and I love Saquon, but those are on him, not on Daniel Jones. But the stat sheet's going to say different, and that matters. But with that being said, Deshaun Watson still didn't play great. He took a lot of sacks. He was just standing in the pocket all day. It's another situation of like, I get you're playing a good defense, but there comes a time where it's like you're just standing in the pocket for too long, or he's just trying to scramble around. He's not scrambling so that he can make a play. He's scrambling so that the play can be made for him to run. And I just didn't love what I saw from Deshaun Watson. And if the Browns want to be a team that makes the playoffs in the still loaded AFC North, they're just gonna have to be able to get better play out of Deshaun.
Yeah, I think that we're talking about not enough attention on Kenny Pickett's failures. What about Deshaun Watson? The team gave up 3 first-round picks to get him with all the baggage that was there off the field, and paid him at the time was the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history, wasn't it? And
Yep.
and he just simply put does not look like the star quarterback that he was in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns must be disappointed.
Yeah, no, so that's Deshaun Watson. Obviously, some really scary stuff happening in that game with Nick Chubb. Um, what do you think of? Yeah, just give me your thoughts on Nick Chubb and maybe how Jerome Ford stepped up in his absence.
Yeah, so obviously the Nick Chubb injury was gruesome as all hell. Um, that your leg's just not supposed to move like that. Um, and I think that this is the reason that I think the Browns win this game with Nick Chubb, even though Jerome Ford played really well. He's not Nick Chubb. Like Nick Chubb there's more to just running the ball than running the ball. Like when Nick Chubb's in the game, the defense is thinking about Nick Chubb. The defense is worried about Nick Chubb. When Jerome Ford is in the game, the defense is not worried about Jerome Ford. And now it's all up to Deshaun Watson to make plays. And you saw that he couldn't do it. So then it became Jerome Ford season. And he stepped up and he played really well. He was looking really fast. He was looking really good. And I mean, if he can continue to play like that, then there's a conversation about how good the Browns can be. But I don't see them going anywhere without Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, they today came out that they bring back Kareem Hunt. I don't know how much that does for them now. I still think you'll see Jerome Ford get looks as the feature back. Um, and yeah, he's looked good when given that opportunity. But like you said, Nick Chubb probably one of top three running backs in the league, maybe my number one, depending on the day. Um,
Yeah.
but he he will be sorely missed in this offense. And like you said, it's hard to see them going places in the loaded AFC and AFC North specifically without without him.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think we can move on to their defense for the
Yeah.
Browns. Uh, this is the bright side of the Browns. This defense is real good. They still look really good. It's like I said before, they're kind of like the cracked out version of the Steelers, where this offense just looks so anemic, but the defense is just so good that they're gonna stay in games. They're gonna be a competitive team this year because the defense is what the defense is.
Yeah, I mean Miles Garrett looks amazing. A guy who you maybe didn't see enough of because of injury. Grant Delpit looks really, really good.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, it's just a really good defensive unit as a whole. I know we saw, I think Greg Newsome get injured in this game, which
My goat.
yeah, which is difficult for you to see. But assuming that he's healthy, a really good cornerback duo with him and Denzel Ward, really good pressure with Zadarius Smith and Miles Garrett. Just a really, really good defensive unit that it's a shame that they'll be without Nick Chubb for the rest of the season because this defense with even a solid offense can make a serious run in the AFC, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you remember last week, I had the Browns as my honorable mention team. It only took 1 week for me to be out on them now. And
Yeah.
it's mostly the Chubb injury, but it's also Deshaun not looking great. But I'm still so in on that defense, and I'm 100% behind everything I said last week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah, stick to your guns, and I think it's fair to be out on them after this week.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Now I think it's time we can move on here to hot takes if you are ready.
Yep, I'm ready. All right. This one will not fly over well with most people. Coming off of a loss, and this it's a hot take for a reason, but I think the Packers are going to win the NFC North.
Ooh.
And not only that, but I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is because I actually bet on them to win the NFC North at the beginning of the season. Um, and I'm sticking with that. And I think once Aaron Jones and Christian Watson comes back, this offense will be even better than it already was. You have Jordan Love, who looks really good right now. They should have won that game, so they should be 2-0. And they have a super easy schedule the rest of the way. I seriously think that the Packers are probably not the best team in the NFC North, but I think they're the team that ends up winning the NFC North. And now, last year, it was kind of like, oh, Christian Watson and who else for Aaron Rodgers? You have guys like Jaden Reed who are stepping up right now. The tight end, I'm blanking on his name, the rookie,
Oh,
Tucker Kraft. And you have Luke Musgrave who looks real good. There's a lot of weapons for Jordan Love now that Aaron Rodgers didn't have last year. So this is not the same team just with Jordan Love instead of Aaron Rodgers. This is a much better team. It really is much better, and they have a real easy schedule.
yeah, and I mean it certainly helps the Vikings starting out 0-2. Um, but listen, I think that like you said, got Jordan Love's got some good weapons now. It's a pretty good offense line. Specifically, you got David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins on the left side of that O line. Um, they could, I could see them making a run and winning that division. And I mean, it's a hot take, but I think a good one.
Yeah.
Anything else before I drop mine?
Now your time to shine.
Okay, my hot take here is it's time to worry about the Cincinnati Bengals. And
Oh,
I know, one of the best teams in the league the last couple of years. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Joe Burrow. But listen, he does not look good in the pocket. He has not looked comfortable. He re-aggravated his calf injury this past week. Who knows if he's even going to play Monday. Um, he has a measly 4.2 yards per attempt, and I know one of those games was played in the rain, but still, you expect the great quarterbacks to rise above the weather conditions, and he just hasn't. He struggled to get Jamar Chase involved this week, which is, I think, a little bit surprising and maybe a little bit concerning.
Yep.
The defense has not looked good. I think it's time to worry.
Listen, I'm the biggest Bengals truther there is out there. I think if Burrow is out, if you're starting 0-2 and Burrow's out and he misses Monday and they fall to 0-3, or he misses Monday and he misses next week too, and they go 0-4, they're done. Their season's over. But I think if Burrow plays and he's actually healthy and he plays like Joe Burrow does, I'm so in on the Bengals. I don't think that them starting 0-2 is going to be a problem. I'm still for it as long as Joe Burrow stays healthy. But I do like to take.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Are we ready to move on to power rankings now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, do you want to drop your number 5 or you have any honorable mentions first?
Yeah, so I'm going to drop my honorable mention. It is the Baltimore Ravens. I really badly wanted to get them in here. And when I'm looking at it right now, I want to put them in my number 5, but I'm going to leave them out. Lamar looked so good, and it's back-to-back weeks. He's looked real good. And I mean, he's always looked good, but he's looked like MVP Lamar again. Maybe not in the stat sheet as much as when you're watching the game, but you can tell. And now that he's got weapons like Zay, OBJ, obviously, Andrews still always there. Yeah, I'm loving the Ravens.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout out. I don't have them in my top 5 either, but definitely a team that, again, we're talking about the loaded AFC North team that's going to make some noise in that division.
Yeah. Do you have an honorable mention, or should I go straight to 5?
I do not this week, so you can go straight to 5.
All right. So my number 5 team, I hated on them last week, and I'm still technically hating on them by having them as my number 5 team, but the Dallas Cowboys are still looking like the 5th best team right now. I mean, they've looked like the best team right now, but I'm going to have them at number 5. They've looked good. They haven't really played anyone. And the way I do power rankings is not how you've looked. It's if the Cowboys played any of the teams ahead of them, I would bet at a neutral field, I would bet on every team that they're playing. Every team ahead of them, I would bet on them over the Cowboys. And that's kind of how I view it. I don't think the Cowboys would beat my 4, 3, 2, or 1 best team. So they're 5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to stick right there and say I also have the Dallas Cowboys as my number 5 team. I'm just going to say, don't throw shade on the Jets like that. They played some level of team, a defense that looked really good against Josh Allen and the Bills. Dak was able to kind of piece up. They look really good defensively, and I know they're playing Zach Wilson, but Zach Wilson I don't think he played such a bad game, but they just made that Jets O-line kind of wish they weren't there. And yeah, they look like a kind of a force to be reckoned with. And I was with you last week, but maybe with that offensive weapons that they have, Tony Pollard has looked really good. CeeDee Lamb looks really good. He was doing a lot of damage in the slot this week. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're a team with that defense that can make some noise in the NFC.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to give them my respect, but they're still not the best team in the NFC East for me, where I have number 4, the Eagles, who have looked pretty whatever. And if the Cowboys played the Eagles tomorrow, I might bet on the Cowboys.
Ooh.
Thinking about the season, though, I bet on the Eagles to be the better team when week 18 comes, because I think the Eagles are going through the adjustment period that I talked about of new coaches and how that's going to affect them right now. But for the moment, I would say that the Eagles are still the 4th best team in the NFL.
Yeah, it's like we have some sort of mind melt going because I also have the Eagles at
Love
number
it.
4. Pretty much everything that you said. They're 2-0, but they're a really good football team that's gotten away with playing a lot of not so good football by just simply being more talented than the teams that they've played. The offense, Jalen Hurts, has not looked great. The defense has looked pretty good, but I don't know. They couldn't seal it against the Vikings this week, like we mentioned earlier. Give it time. I think they'll be all right and probably be moving up this list. But yeah, I think the Eagles are the 4th best team in football.
Yeah. And you talked about mind melt. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we'll have the same number 3 team because my number 3 team is the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
They just look so damn good. And it's just another situation of I I have nothing bad to say about them right now, but it's just these other 2 teams ahead of them just look a little bit better.
Yeah. I think that the Dolphins, like they showed this week that they didn't really need Tua to play this outstanding game. They were still able to win it with the run game. So that was encouraging. And I think the defense looks pretty solid. And when you have weapons like that on offense, like we mentioned earlier, listen, this team could make a run. And I said it last week that I think they might just be the best division in the best team in a tough AFC East division. I think they kind of further proved my point this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bills did look good, but the Dolphins look damn good this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So you want to give your number 2 now?
yeah, number 2, I think we might get off the mind melt because my number 2 team stays the same, and it's San Francisco 49ers. Definitely the most complete team in the league. And when you think about like the Niners versus 10 through 32, they're going to be the best team against that because they just run the ball well. They've got the great defense. Purdy isn't turning the ball over, even if he's not looking that great. But against the teams with higher ceilings like the Chiefs, the Eagles, even the Bills or the Bengals, who have looked less good, but against those types of teams, that's where the Niners would struggle a little bit more because they just don't have the firepower at quarterback. And I still do worry about that. So that's why they're 2 and not 1.
Interesting. Yeah, the mind meld does end here. I'm also going to say the same as last week, and I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs as my number 2 team. For me, probably would be number 1, but the offense has come out of the gate a little bit slow. And I know Kelsey didn't play week 1, didn't play. I don't think he played too much week 2, although they certainly targeted him a lot when he was on the field. But yeah, I think the defense has looked really good, which is encouraging. But that offense, which I have faith will get better and probably will eventually carry their way up to number 1, just scoring 17 points against a mediocre Jaguars defense at best. I don't know. It's a little concerning to me.
Yeah, definitely. So to continue talking about the Chiefs, which is my number 1 team, the offense looks a little questionable right now, but you think about Kelsey only played 64% of the snaps this week, like you said. The receiving threats outside of Kelsey aren't really there right now. But the good sign that keeps them at number 1 ahead of the Niners for me is his defense looks real good, and you can feel the effect of having Chris Jones, and not just in his, I think he had 1.5 sacks this week. It's not just that. It just feels like the defense plays so much more calm and comfortable, and the Jags are arguably a top 5 offense in the NFL, and they limited them to, what was it, like 9 points they had? It
Yeah.
was a weird score. Yeah. 9 points. This defense looks really good, and that's something that hasn't existed in the Patrick Mahomes era.
Yeah, moving on to my number 1 team, also staying the same as last week, I have the San Francisco 49ers. And listen, like you said, Brock Purdy has not looked great, but you know what? This team I think is just so good that they can work around it and figure it out. They got great weapons on offense. Christian McCaffrey had another really nice week. They have probably the best defense in the NFL. Defense looked really good out in Los Angeles. I know they allowed 23 points, but they were forced, I think, 2 or 3 turnovers. And listen, they haven't been able to stop Puka Nakua. I'm not sure anyone else can. So yeah, I'm still giving them the benefit of the doubt, keeping them at number one.
Yeah, definitely. And they do deserve it. They've looked like the best team so far, so there's no disagreement for me on them at number one. But sticking with the Niners, they are the Thursday night football game against the lowly Giants.
Yes. Uh,
Um,
Big injuries this week. We saw that Andrew Thomas isn't going to play. Saquon nursing the ankle sprain is not going to play either. I think, was there one more player for the Giants who wasn't? Is it Ben Bredesen is out as well?
Ben Bredesen does have a concussion, so that's
Yeah, I
brutal.
mean,
But
I'm not sure if that's such a big blow considering how he's played.
well, listen, he's probably been the best guard for the Giants, which is saying nothing, but listen, everyone in that interior sucks except John Michael Schmitz, with respect. Uh,
Yeah, so I don't know. Give me, as a Giants fan, give me your level of optimism for this week's game.
it's about I would give us a 2% chance to win, let's say. With Saquon, there's a real discussion. With Andrew Thomas, there's a discussion. Without them, what the hell is this offense? But if I were to say, how did the Giants somehow pull it off? They have to stop the run, which is very hard to do against the Niners in the first place. But they've been so awful at it this year, and I just don't see that getting any better. And they also have to be able to run the ball successfully, or they have to be able to build on what they were doing against the Cardinals, which was use different levels of the field passing the ball. They had 4 explosive plays in the second half, which if you watch the breakdown on this Giants offense, they do not have explosive passing. They've been awful at it in the Daniel Jones era, and 4 explosive passing plays in one half is pretty damn good. So if they can continue that, which they won't, but if they can, they could get a W. And the last thing they need Evan Neal to step up. He needs to be able to handle Nick Bosa, especially with Andrew Thomas out, and you're not getting that protection on the left side. Even though Josh Oswedu, he didn't look too bad, but this is the real test for Evan Neal. This is the time where he turns into that top. What was he? He was the number 7 pick.
7 pick.
Yeah, this is the time where he turns into that top 7 pick, and he's got to ball out, man.
Yeah, I think that, listen, the Giants, you're going on the road, you're going into Santa Clara. I don't know. There are no moral victories in football, but listen, if they can walk out of here with it making it a one possession game, I think you got to take that as a real positive, and especially after the way they came back against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, if they come out with a 1 possession game, I'll be ecstatic.
Yeah, anything else before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would just say for the Niners to win, there is no keynotes. They just need to play like themselves and not turn the ball over, which they've done a good job of not doing. But if they turn the ball over, that's really the only way that they lose. I got Niners 30-13.
I'm not even going to have a score prediction because I don't even know when this game's going to look like on the Giants end of the ball. But I'll just say this, Christian McCaffrey probably going to get a good 20 to 30 touches this game.
Yeah.
If I'm the Niners, I just want to pound the rock against this Giants front.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely just pound the rock, and it's just straight touchdowns because the Giants couldn't stop James Conner and Josh Dobbs. What are they going to do with Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah. Well, that's it, I think, for us this week on the Check Down Pod. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week with our next episode.
Have a good one.